The rain was coming down in sheets as I stared out the window of my Seattle apartment, the Space Needle barely visible through the gray. I am Kester, 44, a software developer, and until a few weeks ago I thought I had it all. A beautiful wife, a comfortable life, and a future that seemed as bright as the Emerald City on a sunny day. My wife, Eloan, worked as a marketing manager for a big tech company. We'd been together for 15 years, married for 12. We met in college and she was everything I'd ever wanted, smart, funny, and fiercely independent, or so I thought. It started subtly. Eloan began working later, claiming new projects and demanding deadlines. She traveled more for work, attending conferences in places like San Francisco and New York. I didn't think much of it at first. We were both ambitious and I understood the demands of a career. But then came the changes in her behavior. She became distant, less affectionate. Our conversations dwindled to logistical updates about groceries and bills. Our intimacy evaporated. I tried to talk to her about it, but she brushed it off, saying I was imagining things, that work was just stressful. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But a nagging feeling, a cold knot of dread, began to form in my stomach. I started noticing things. A new perfume I hadn't bought her, a lipstick shade I didn't recognize, a lingering scent of cologne in the car that wasn't mine. One evening, Eloan said she had a conference in San Francisco and wouldn't be back until Friday. I kissed her goodbye at the airport, trying to ignore the hollowness in her eyes. That night I couldn't sleep. The feeling that something was terribly wrong was overwhelming. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing hour. On a whim, I decided to check her work email. I knew it was a breach of trust, a violation of her privacy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I waited until 3 a.m. when I was sure she was asleep, and then I crept into her office. Her password was saved on her computer, something I'd always found convenient, never suspicious. My heart pounded in my chest as I logged in. The first few emails were innocuous, project updates, meeting schedules, the usual corporate jargon. But then I saw it. An email from a man named Jowan with the subject line, "Thinking of you." My hands trembled as I clicked it open. The email was short, but its message was devastatingly clear. "Last night was amazing," it read. "I can't wait to see you again on Friday," counting down the hours. The blood drained from my face. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My world tilted on its axis. I scrolled through the rest of the email chain, each message a fresh stab wound to my heart. They were planning a weekend getaway in Napa Valley, filled with romantic dinners, wine tastings, and stolen moments. Everything clicked into place. The late nights, the business trips, the distance, the new perfume. She wasn't working late, she was with him. The man in the emails, Jowan, was a colleague of hers. I recognized his name from company newsletters and social events. He was married too, with 2 young children. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I stumbled back to bed, but sleep was impossible. My mind raced, replaying every moment of our relationship, searching for clues I'd missed, signs I'd ignored. I felt like a fool, a dupe, a pathetic caricature of a husband. How could she do this to me? How could she betray our vows, our love, our life together? The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions at work, pretending everything was normal, while inside I was crumbling. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, trapped in a reality I couldn't escape. On Friday morning, Eloan returned from her conference. She walked through the door with a bright smile, her eyes sparkling, her cheeks flushed. "Hey, honey," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "How was your week?" I stared at her, my heart filled with a mixture of rage and pain. How could she be so nonchalant, so carefree after what she'd done? I wanted to scream, to shout, to confront her with the truth, but I couldn't. I needed to gather my thoughts to plan my next move. "It was fine," I said, my voice flat. "Just the usual." That weekend, I decided to confront her. I waited until Sunday evening, after we'd had dinner, after we'd watched a movie, after we'd pretended for a few hours that everything was okay. "Eloan," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk." She looked at me, her eyes wary. "What is it?" "I know about Jowan," I said, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. Her face paled, her eyes widened. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I read your emails, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I know about your weekend in Napa, about your feelings for him, about everything. Tears welled up in her eyes. She looked at me, her face a mask of guilt and shame. Kester, I don't, I said, cutting her off. Don't insult me with your lies, just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on? She hesitated for a moment, then hung her head. 6 months, she whispered, 6 months, half a year, all those lies, all those deceptions, all those stolen moments. The pain was almost unbearable. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why did you do this to me? She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. I don't know, she said. I was unhappy. I felt neglected. I felt like we were drifting apart. So you decided to cheat on me? I asked, my voice rising. That's your solution to betray our vows, our marriage, our love? She didn't answer. She just sat there, sobbing silently. I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. I want you to leave, I said, my voice shaking with rage. I want you out of my house, out of my life. I can't stand to look at you anymore. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Kester, please, she begged. Don't do this. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can fix our marriage. It's too late, I said, my voice cold. You broke my trust. You shattered my heart. There's no going back. She started to cry harder, her body shaking with sobs, but I didn't feel any sympathy for her. All I felt was anger, pain, and a deep sense of betrayal. I walked out of the room, leaving her alone with her tears. The next few weeks were a living hell. Aloan moved out, taking most of her belongings with her. The house felt empty, cold, and haunted by memories of what we'd once shared. I filed for divorce, and the legal proceedings were messy and acrimonious. Aloan tried to blame me for the breakdown of our marriage, claiming I was emotionally distant and neglectful. But I had the emails, the proof of her infidelity, and the judge sided with me. In the end, she got very little. As the divorce finalized, I felt empty. The anger and pain began to subside, replaced by a dull ache of sadness and loss. I missed Aloan, not the woman she'd become, but the woman I thought she was, the woman I'd fallen in love with. I knew I needed to move on, to rebuild my life, but I didn't know how. A few months later, I received an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Mallory, Jowan's wife. She said she'd heard about what had happened between Aloan and Jowan, and she wanted to talk. I hesitated at first, unsure if I wanted to dredge up the past. But curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet her for coffee. Mallory was a petite woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked tired, worn down by the stress of her husband's infidelity. We talked for hours, sharing our stories of betrayal and heartbreak. We discovered we had a lot in common: a love of books, a passion for hiking, and a shared sense of disillusionment with love and marriage. Over the next few weeks, Mallory and I began spending more time together. We went for walks in the park, attended concerts, and cooked dinners at each other's apartments. We found comfort in each other's company, a sense of understanding and support that we hadn't found anywhere else. One evening, after a particularly long and emotional conversation, Mallory looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. Kester, she said, I don't know what I would have done without you. You've been such a rock for me. I smiled, taking her hand in mine. You've been the same for me, Mallory, I said. You've helped me see that there's life after betrayal, that it's possible to find happiness again. We sat there for a moment, holding hands, our eyes locked in a silent understanding. And then, without a word, we leaned in and kissed. It was a gentle kiss, a tentative kiss, but it was filled with a warmth and tenderness that I hadn't felt in years. In the months that followed, Mallory and I grew closer. We fell in love, slowly and cautiously, like two wounded birds learning to fly again. We knew that our relationship was unconventional, born out of pain and betrayal, but we didn't care. We found solace and happiness in each other's arms, a sense of peace and belonging that we'd both been searching for. A year later, Mallory and I got married. It was a small, intimate ceremony, attended by our closest friends and family. As I stood at the altar looking into Mallory's eyes, I knew that I'd found my soulmate, my true love. I'd been through hell and back, but I'd emerged stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the love I had in my life. Aloan eventually moved to another state and found a job in a small marketing firm. I heard through mutual friends that she and Jowan broke up, and he was shunned by his company. She never apologized, never admitted the full extent of her betrayal. But I didn't need her apology. I'd found my own closure, my own happiness, my own revenge. Sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on and building a better life for yourself. The rain outside has stopped, and the sun is beginning to peek through the clouds. The Space Needle is gleaming in the distance, a symbol of hope and renewal. I take Mallory's hand and we walk out into the sunshine, ready to face whatever the future holds. It's a new beginning.